Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Sound the horn. Sound the Jason horn.
MASKHOLES.
Yeah.
Talking about MASKHOLES.
Oh my goodness.
Jason.
Is that my girl?
Yeah. At the bottom
That's beautiful.
of Crystal Lake.
Holy
There's a
moly.
Jason. Anyway.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
Man, it's hard. I gotta get my game face on.
I know this is for real. This is game day. This is like we gotta be good, Dave. We have to be
This is
good today.
historic.
Yeah.
Historic.
This is
Welcome.
the only podcast we've ever done that matters, Dave.
It's true.
Yeah.
This is folks. This is MASKHOLES. Welcome to MASKHOLES.
Welcome.
A podcast. Cast.
Yep. Cast.
And yeah, this is fuck.
How has it taken 5 years for us to do a Friday the 13th show? That's
I don't know.
what are we doing with our lives, Dave?
I think we just watch it on so many Friday movie nights
That's
that
true,
it didn't even occur to us to do this. Okay, we got to get some business out of the way. Big thank you to Krishanovich, our producer. They worked with us for a bit to figure out a podcast we wanted to do, and it occurred to us like, wow, we haven't done a Friday the 13th podcast. So that's what we're going to do, folks. This is, man, what is this? This is a podcast where we watch all the Friday the 13th films.
Yeah.
And then we talk about them.
Yeah.
And we have segments. Should we tell them the segments, or should we just go into each one?
I think we should surprise them because that's what Jason would do.
That is what Jason would do. For people who don't quite know our excitement, myself and Tom, having kind of, as we grew, as Gamefully Unemployed grew, we found ourselves falling in love with the Friday the 13th video
Right.
game.
We sort of launched Gamefully Unemployed more as a streaming network for video games initially, and one of the games we streamed all of the time with all of our delightful, beautiful friends was the Friday the 13th game.
Yeah, it was less a video game streaming and more of just a Friday the 13th game streaming.
That's true.
Yeah, it's mostly what we did, that and board games. And so, like, Friday the 13th has just been baked in to this network for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you. We should talk about this up front. Like, I had seen some of the Friday the 13th before that, but it was really that game that made me go, that made like the movies click in my head. And then when we watched all the movies again, I just got really into them.
I have always been into Jason.
Actually, sorry, I am now realizing that at Cracked, this had started at Cracked.
This started at Cracked, yeah.
Because we weren't streaming it at first, or were we? I don't know.
I think we might have streamed it a little bit, but we just streamed it as honkies that were working at Cracked instead of honkies that had started their own business.
I remember that only because I wrote into an After Hours a bit about Friday the 13th. So like it's clear that I had been paying attention. But like that's still how the timeline went, which was like the game and then the movies and then enjoying them. So you've always been into?
I've always been into Jason. I have a picture that I like to share with friends and family. It's a picture of my second grade class's Halloween. It's my second grade class's Halloween group picture. And everybody's like fairies and Ninja Turtles and such. And then there's this little ghoul, this little string bean ghoul in the front with a fucking Jason mask and a bloody knife. And that's me.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
I've been obsessed with Jason since I was a little kid. I realized he was funny in middle school.
Yeah. Because he is.
He's extremely funny. I think he's the funniest, one of the funniest characters in the history of entertainment.
Yeah.
He's
one of our.
He's
like a mime, like silent.
He's a mime.
Funny.
He's a physical comedian.
Yeah.
Because Jason has to express everything non-verbally. Jason never speaks. And when you couple that with a film series that began as a slasher series in earnest, which was to do an escalating series of escalatingly gruesome kills that were gruesome both in gore and also in concept. When you couple that with a character who basically can only communicate physically or by miming, those are some pristine ingredients for comedy, and they figured it out in Jason 6 where they really leaned into it. And I think thereafter, not all of the Jason, with the exception of part 6 and like Freddy versus Jason and Jason X, but they still do make Jason horror movies for the most part. Friday the 13th movies are done in earnest, but they are now aware that he's kind of funny. So they sort of lean into it more about where it's less about trying to be genuinely horrific with the kills and more about trying to be just ridiculous and having this goofball physical comedian zombie at the center of their film.
I think they always do
things,
Even before that, there's always been funny side characters.
Yeah,
lots of boobs.
Sure.
And so like they've always sort of known what they're making. But you're right that like whether or not Jason, and we'll talk about this in this movie because this movie is definitely. It's funny how this movie to me feels like it's so far from what. It is. This is not like watching like Evil Dead and you're like, yeah, this is the uncut shit. This is like what Evil Dead is. No, like this movie, I'm just like, this is like one of the farther from.
It is. It's the furthest actually. Like this one is just a straightforward, genuine, made in earnest horror movie. Like it's trying to be scary. I think it is effective in a lot of ways. Like it is. I think this is a. Pretty
I want
to
talk about that. Yeah, I want to talk about what this movie does right with horror. It's So for that reason, this podcast is going to get, I think, more interesting as we go, or more fun. Which isn't to say this won't be fun because I had fun watching this.
Oh yeah, it's a great film.
But this movie is one of the things I always notice when I watch this. It's trying to be Psycho a little bit, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
The music feels like it's the music from Psycho.
Yeah.
It's, of course, around, spoilers, a mother. And the mother it's kind of doing a Psycho thing. It just occurred to me that they were kind of playing that up.
Yeah.
There's some weird things the movie does. Like, I completely forgot that the concept of Jason we don't learn about until the very end. Jason is so not in this movie that they don't even say his name.
They do, but not until like, an hour and 10 minutes in or something. Like
it's a weird idea. It's weird to have this. I think it's trying to be like Scream, where that it's kind of a murder mystery.
It is. Yeah, it is. They create another suspect in Steve and in Ralph, who we'll talk about. It is more about like a thriller that's trying to be a whodunit, and it does deliberate things to keep you confused. Like it changes who is playing Mrs. Voorhees, and like who we see her hands a lot, but it's not the actress, and like we see her at a distance, like when she lures Ned into the cabin, and that's not the actress. They do when she'll do Jason's voice, and that's when they do it in the film. It's an actual child, so they do a lot of like sort of tricks to keep you from being able to keep doubt and confusion in your mind. Like it really is trying to be like kind of a whodunit and also a slasher.
Right. And I would argue that If I had seen this in theaters, I'd be kind of mad at it because the answer, you don't meet Pamela Voorhees in the movie. I had just always assumed, like in my mind, my like Mandela effect of this movie is that you meet her early as like a character.
Nope.
So they show all these characters. And then ultimately the killer is just a new person who shows up and is just like, hi, I'm here now.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, fuck, I couldn't have figured that out. You can't just create a new character to show up with a whole new motivation.
Yeah, that's fair.
Weird.
I think it's the movie trying to have a twist, and also they do hint at it. They mention the drowned boy a few times before that.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. I quite enjoy this movie, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like if I had seen this movie out of context, not knowing the glory it would stem from it, I think that would have rubbed me the wrong way initially. This movie does very good things, though. Because it feels less like a murder mystery and more of a shell game of who's going to be the final person.
Yeah. No, that's accurate. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most interesting thing it does, I think.
Yeah. The biggest strength, for people who haven't seen this movie, I don't know what to tell you.
It's Friday the 13th. Go watch it.
It's Friday the 13th.
What are you doing?
Go watch
what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, it's the first one. Jason is not in it. And in fact, Jason will not get his mask until the third movie.
Until part 3.
Yeah. So, that's interesting. And so this first one is Pamela Voorhees, Jason's mom. And it's, Kevin Bacon and others going to Camp Crystal Lake, and they all get murdered. That's the movie.
They sure do. Yeah.
We can go.
Yeah, there was, back in 1958, there was, or 1957, Jason drowned. And it was because nobody was watching him. The counselors were boning instead of watching the kids, so he drowned in the lake. And then in 1958, 2 counselors sneak off after singing Kumbaya to go fuck in a barn. And Pamela Voorhees kills them both, except we don't see who kills them. But
all right, I want to talk about this a little more.
Sure.
Because it is the least horny thing. They're singing the fucking Kumbaya. And
nothing gets me hotter than singing
then,
Kumbaya to a bunch of kids.
Yep, and then these 2 counselors look at each other and they're like, I am moist right now.
Yeah.
And they go to this barn attic.
We should fuck like we've doodled about in church.
Yep. They lay down this itchy fucking blanket in this barn attic next to some old wire and a discarded table, and it just smells like dead mice in there.
Right,
and they're having so fucking horny.
They're having sex on spider eggs.
Yeah, this whole movie, the camp, it's just like, this is why I never went to camp. It's disgusting.
Yeah, the camp looks awful. This place is a dump.
It's really funny. Like, the most unrealistic part of this whole series is how horny everybody is to be at this camp.
Right. How down people are to fuck in a splintery, bug and snake infested cabin.
Yeah. Poison ivy and mosquitoes.
Blankets from 30 years ago.
Yeah. And those 2 are killed. And it starts with this hippie chick backpacking. And it starts with what we assume to be our main character.
Right.
She's getting a ride. She meets the weirdos in town. And then we meet the other teens, Kevin Bacon, listening to bluegrass in their fucking truck.
Just listening to some dude fucking light it up with a banjo solo.
Just getting high and speeding down the road.
Yep.
And then they show up and they're all counselors and they're going to get ready. We meet Steve, the 30-year-old man chopping wood in cut-off jeans and nothing else.
Man.
Oh, sorry, no. He has a red wool socks and a red bandana.
Red wool socks and boots, cut-offs, and the bandana. Yeah, he fucking rules. I love him.
Yeah. Well, Steve, so I love that Steve is just like, I'm Steve. This is what I look like. Now I'm going to leave you alone for like 10 hours here
he says
during a storm.
He says I'll be back sometime after lunch, and he's gone for the entire movie. He doesn't come back until after nightfall. I don't know what the fuck he was doing all day.
And what happens when he comes back? He immediately
gets murdered. He doesn't even get back into the camp. He makes it to the entrance sign and gets stabbed in his tummy. I
love Steve, but Steve sucks.
Yeah, he doesn't.
But that's sort of so this is the strength of this movie. Is that, a few weeks back we actually did a thing about Red State. It's actually kind of similar. This is what I was talking about, the shell game, which is like you kind of don't know who's gonna fucking survive because the deaths are so sudden, and you forget that. You know, nowadays it's almost like it's your standard movie, but like, you know, Kevin Bacon is lying in bed and he literally gets stabbed through the bed. Yeah. And you're like, whoa, you know, like, because you just don't see that shit coming. And so there's this idea of like, who's going to fucking make it?
Yeah, who will survive and what will be left of them, Dave?
Yeah, exactly. And to the point that final scene, I know I'm skipping ahead, with the final girl, when the generator gets shut off and the guy goes, and then they go to her and she's like walking around and the camera like pans with her as she opens the pantry, and you're just sort of waiting for her to get grabbed and killed, and they know it. Mm-hmm. And so like that's the strength of the movie, is anybody can die at any moment and it doesn't matter because spoilers, that hitchhiker girl gets killed in like the first 20 minutes of the film.
She's the first victim, and they make it seem like she's the main character.
Yeah, which again, Psycho. They're inspired by Psycho for sure.
Yeah. And I do like that even at this early stage in 1980, that scene that you were mentioning with the person who does turn out to be the final girl, it's following her through the kitchen as she's lighting the stove and getting stuff from the pantry. And the camera is just following her back and forth. Like it knows. It's the same game that countless horror movie directors have played since then, like in James Wan does it for one of the murder scenes in *Malignant*, just for a recent example. Right. But it already knows that the audience understands how and when jump scares happen, so it's playing with that in this scene.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to be reminded that jump scares, like that specific language, has existed for this long in horror movies.
It's a very good example of how we get more sophisticated when it comes to consuming art, because like this is seen as an early one, but like there was stuff before this, right? Valentine's Day. We watched that movie.
My Bloody Valentine.
My Bloody Valentine.
But yes, and then Halloween
White
obviously
Christmas,
is
Halloween.
The most direct.
Yeah.
Black Christmas. White Christmas is a different film. All
right, doesn't matter.
But yeah, I think
Wait,
like
which one's White Christmas?
The one with Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye.
Oh, okay. It's not Christmas in Connecticut, directed by Arnold Schwarzenegger.
No.
Okay. Point being that people knew the language, and so they're playing with it here.
Yeah.
And so you're right. Like I imagined being in the audience for this for the first time, and probably the people being like, like waiting for it in that scene because they know what they're doing, and they know how the audience is going to react.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we meet Steve. We meet Bill. He's
Bill,
dressed like,
who is painting in jeans and thin red suspenders and nothing else. He looks.
Yep.
He looks like Mork from Ork posing for a swimsuit calendar.
He really does. That's exactly what it looks like.
He's incredible. I love
all these
Bill.
maniacs. And there's a reason they're doing this. They kill the hitchhiker girl. It's funny because she dives out of that car.
Like head first.
Because
I would have jumped out feet first, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's a girl who's been hitchhiking. That's my vibe. It's like the 80s. We're getting off of the serial killer stuff.
Yeah.
She's a hitchhiking. She's a young girl.
Right.
She knows when to dive out of a car.
She hitchhikes with one hand on the door handle.
Yeah.
Like she's ready to dive out of the car, and she does.
And she does. Doesn't help her. She gets murdered in the woods.
No, she gets super murdered.
Yeah. But it's very shocking. Like every time I watch this movie, part of me always forgets
that she's not the main,
happens.
right? Because it really seems like she's the main character,
right? I remember once she's like on the road hitchhiking again, but when she goes into town at first, my mind just goes, "Oh, it's the main character," because they're giving her all this exposition. And what this movie also realizes is that you don't need to show the main character's exposition. We just need the exposition.
It's just the audience needs it, right?
Yeah. So Storm comes. Kevin Bacon does some good old Storm fucking. We meet, what's his name? Is it Ted? Ned?
No, Nettie, the guy who's creeping on them.
Ned, the maniac. We'll talk about him. And we meet Crazy Ralph, which we'll also talk about.
I've got a lot to say. Well, not a lot, but one very loud thing to say about Ralph.
Yeah, I'm just trying to go through the plot first. Ned is killed off camera.
He sure is.
Kevin Bacon does some storm fucking, and then he gets killed with an arrow.
Yep. Through the bed.
Meanwhile, the other counselors are playing strip Monopoly, which I gotta say, again, not sexy. Just like this camp, that would take 3 hours, and it would end with one person with all the clothes and everybody else angry.
Right. It's anti-horny.
Yeah.
Like it's not the strip game to play. It's not the game to apply strip rules to, because if you apply strip rules to it, then why are you still using money? Like, how do you...
Right.
Because they make it so, like, when somebody lands on your property, they have to give you a piece of clothing, and yet you still need... They're still using the in-game money to buy property. So it's like, well, how are you making money then?
Right.
Are we trading panties for $500? Is that how it's working?
I don't know. They didn't. Yeah, they're not putting a value on that.
A sock for $50?
The point. So, I really want to break this down, because strip poker, the sexy version. Mm-hmm. The idea of poker is everybody takes a hit eventually. Yes, someone can like sweep, but like most of the time, even when you're playing like with pot odds and stuff, you would still have to like take some hits. And depending on the rules, if like, oh, every time you fold, you also have to strip or something like that, it can get sexy pretty fast. Like, the idea is to get sexy fast. Monopoly, how often... Like, so first of all, you have to go around the board a few times before you're buying stuff, I'm assuming. And so, like, you're slowly buying stuff up, and, like, how often are people landing on things? Like, it's like an intense game of chess. It just takes a while. But then, yeah, you just slowly get angry because Monopoly, naturally... It's the game was literally invented to point out how monopolies fuck people over, right?
I also think it was designed to last the entirety of the Great Depression.
Yes, that's
when you set it up.
Yes, so like I just can't stress enough how not sexy strip Monopoly is. And they don't
Monopoly is the least sexy board game ever invented. So when you throw strip rules onto it, it's like throwing lingerie onto a dead rat.
Yeah, it really is. And they don't finish because no one ever finishes a game of Monopoly.
No. Why on earth would you?
They don't finish because they just get bored. Like, they're just like, what are the other people
the
up
door
to?
blows open, and then they realize the storm's gotten real bad, and then one of the girls is like, oh, shit, I left my cabin windows open. So she's like, well, we'll pick this game up tomorrow. I gotta go.
Right. So if it was actually sexy... she wouldn't care that she left her cabin windows open,
right. The horniness would take priority. It's like, well, the sexiness is the goal for tonight. Our goal is to be sexy. So
right.
My windows being open is secondary.
But she literally goes back to her cabin and starts reading a book. Mm-hmm. That's how unsexy the Monopoly is.
Yeah, it's.
She's like, okay, this isn't going anywhere.
I will say that for a teen slasher, and I think they're even adults. But anyway, for something that is considered part of the teen slasher genre and is supposed to abide by all those tropes, there really isn't that much sex. There's two different scenes where a couple has sex, and we only briefly see nudity in one of them.
Yeah, they up this in the
They
later
sure
ones.
do, but it's interesting that this first movie really isn't that.
Yeah. No, it's trying to be fairly serious.
Like it's trying to be like an actual movie.
Yeah, it sure is.
It sure is, and I think it mostly succeeds.
Yeah, I think so. There's still some... We'll get into what makes this movie funny. So, like, everybody starts dying. The girl goes into the bathroom, gets an axe to the face. Another girl goes to the bathroom, gets followed and murdered, and we'll go into that. And then, again, like I said, like... it basically goes down to this final girl. She sees that her, like, the other guy that went to do the generator is dead. And then, like, just this woman shows up at the end in her Jeep and is like, hi, I'm here to help.
In her Jeep in a crocheted sweater.
Yep. Very important sweater.
Mm-hmm.
Big item in the video game.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's like, did you know a boy drowned here? And then you get pretty quickly you realize, like, oh, she's a maniac.
Right, she can't keep up the facade of sanity for very long.
No.
It's about 2 minutes.
It becomes a cat and mouse where Pamela Voorhees, who's avenging her son, for whatever reason, let the game slip for this one final girl who they're running around. And she checks drawers. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Another shout out to the video game. She's checking drawers, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And she finds the gun in the garage, where it always is in the game. That doesn't do. I forget. Does she shoot Pamela?
No, she can't. She can't get the drawer open for the bullets. So she pretends like the gun has bullets, but when Pamela keeps coming, she throws it at her.
Right, and so it's this whole cat and mouse that's pretty fun. She hits her with a frying pan. She goes to the boat. I don't know why she's not taking the car.
Did you watch the unrated version?
Oh, I don't know.
There's an edition.
I have the box set, but I didn't watch it.
Oh, okay. Well, if it's included in the box set.
Yeah.
There's an additional shot of Pamela on the ground with a gigantic like bruise on her head and blood behind her head on the ground after she gets hit with the frying pan.
They do show her like lift her head and there's blood.
Oh, okay. They do show that?
So yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And again, this girl, like, I know her friend's dead body is in the Jeep. Take the Jeep. Or just take the road.
I was watching with Marina and she said the same thing. Because it's not even her friend. She's never met this, but it's Annie. It's the girl from the beginning.
Oh, right. It's the hitchhiker.
So she leans into the Jeep and just sees that Annie's dead in the passenger seat, which means Annie's been sitting in the passenger seat of that Jeep all day.
Yes. We'll talk about
that. But yeah. But anyway, I just brought up the Pamela on the ground shot to show that like the final girl whose name I forget has a reasonable amount of information to believe that Pamela is dead.
Oh yeah. No, for sure. It's still weird to take the boat.
She belted a 60-year-old woman in the face with a fucking skillet.
Right, which means she can take the road, she can take the Jeep.
Yeah.
Again, boat, there's no cops that direction. It's just more woods. It's a weird thing to do. But she gets on the she doesn't get on the boat right away. She chops Pamela's head off.
Right. When Pamela first shows up, she does tell her they've killed everyone. So it's, you remember, she didn't hear. Alice. Alice is her name. Alice didn't hear all the exposition that we heard.
Right.
And actually, I guess that doesn't even matter. But anyway, she doesn't know how many people are there, is my point.
Right. That's true. I would still not take the boat.
I would still get in the car, but also I understand just getting into the canoe.
You played the video game. Boat is always death.
The boat is a real gamble. Real gamble.
And then she chops off Pamela's head, and at that point, I feel like she should feel secure enough not to just take this fucking canoe out. But
you're skipping over the fact they fight like motherfuckers.
They really do.
They really. It's not like a flashy fight, but it's a real like ugly and like painful fight.
It's no John Wick, but it's kind of the best kind of fight, which is like a very human fight where you're like, yeah, that's what a fight looks like.
It's not elegant.
She
They're
chops
just
her
biting
fucking
each
head
other.
off.
Yeah. She
chops her head off
like
the snake,
Yeah.
The
real snake, by the way.
Yep. Yeah, I know. The snake handler, if I remember, was not happy about that. It's got this is real indie, fucking horror shit.
Yeah.
It's fucking weird. Filmmaker beatniks.
Pretty gnarly.
Yeah. She leaves on the boat, and then she gets. People probably know the ending. A little ghoul Jason jumps out of the water, grabs her, and then she wakes up in the hospital, and they're like, "We found you. Everybody's dead but you." She's like, "And the little boy," and they're like, "What little boy?" And she's like, "That means he's still out there."
Right. She's like, "The little boy that pulled me underwater." I'm like, "We didn't find a boy." And she's like, "That means he's still out there." What that actually means is the sheriff now thinks that there's a boy in the equation. So the cops are going to spend like the next 3 days dredging that lake.
Yeah, they sure are.
Just from judging by what she's like, he has no way of knowing that there like wasn't a little boy with them that might have fallen in the lake. So that's what he is going to assume.
Right, and he's like, can't have another little boy drown.
Yeah.
When does this take place?
1980.
1980. So Jason drowned in 57?
Yeah. 23 years ago.
So he's 23 years old? No, he's like 30? Why is that little boy still a little boy?
Well, he's a little boy in her nightmare.
Right.
the actual Jason, as we learn in part 2, did not drown, survived, and has been living in a shanty in the woods and witnessed the events of Friday the 13th from the forest.
That would conveniently bring us to our next segment. Are you ready for this?
I am.
It's time to ask the question, what's Jason up to?
So, I mean, it depends on how you interpret this movie. If this movie stands alone, Jason is sitting on the bottom of the lake. That's what he's doing the whole movie.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't think it should.
No.
I think we're going to talk about... I want to talk about Pamela as well, obviously, because that's actually the spirit of this segment is... people have made this observation. Our own Jason Pargin has. We've talked about it before with other horror movies. Is like when you actually follow the killer, you realize how exhausting and weird it is what they're up to. I think Ghostface is the funniest usually, because Ghostface is just a person in a mask who's probably sweating their balls off, or labia, and they're like, running around and setting up stuff. But Jason's pretty funny too. So Jason himself, he's either at the bottom of the lake or he's just like surviving in the woods for some reason, not getting involved.
Yeah, he's just watching. Like Pamela clearly doesn't know he's still alive.
Right, but is he watching? Because he gets her head, but like you'd think he would have stepped in while his mom was in trouble, right? So I assumed he was like in his shack, but not actually watching.
Well, they know, they do say in the second movie that he knows. I mean, the second movie, spoilers, starts with him tracking down Alice.
Yes.
And they say that they suggest that he must have witnessed Pamela get decapitated. Because he goes and gets her head right after.
Yeah, I assume he maybe showed up just for that. But the question is, of course, like, why wouldn't he, if he saw his mom running around, why wouldn't he be like, hey, mom? Because he knew her enough to get her head later. So, like, he knew that was his mother. Maybe he overheard her talking about it at the end. My point being that I don't know if Jason's watching the entire time. I feel like he's just in the woods surviving, picking berries. And then he came upon the camp later. He maybe heard a commotion. This is all speculation.
I think he's watching the whole time.
Wow. He's just not getting involved?
Well, he doesn't want to know his mom. He doesn't want his mom to know that he's alive because he doesn't, he hasn't let her know for the past 20 years.
Right.
He's been living in his shanty.
So he was afraid to approach and then it was too late?
Yeah, he was probably scared too because it's been abandoned his whole life.
Right. Poor
like,
Jason.
He doesn't know what's going on, so he's just like spying on these. He's not a zombie yet. He's just spying on these people.
Yeah.
Like, what are they doing at this camp? Oh, there's my mom. She's fucking him up. Great, go mom. And then he witnesses that shit, and he's just like...
And he's like, oh, shit.
Stunned.
Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. But also, he's probably picking berries and trapping squirrels.
Right.
We see in part 2 that his wardrobe is immaculately clean, so he must be washing his clothes.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that.
His shirts,
the way Jason lives.
In part 2, his shirts even look like starched and pressed. Like he is
right. It's possible he goes into town.
Dave, he's looking crisp.
Yeah.
In part 2.
Yeah, not so much later in the series.
No, he starts to degrade steadily after that.
Yeah,
but
he's looking all right.
He's looking pretty crisp in part 2.
You want to talk about Pamela's journey? Because
I
want to talk about Pamela's journey. Because she starts like in the woods, so she has a Jeep.
Yeah.
But we first see a POV watching Alice run to Bill in the woods. So she starts in the woods, and she's just watching, and then she goes back to her Jeep, and I'm not sure why. Like my guess was that she's going back into town to grab lunch or something, because she gets in the Jeep and she's driving away from the camp when she finds the hitchhiker.
Yes.
Then she picks up the hitchhiker and is like, I don't know why. So she must have found this girl and was just like, oh, that's a freebie, right? Then she kills her, and then she drives back to the lake.
She must have been, okay, so here's what it is. She must have been driving around. Oh, no, wait, because she must have known that Steve Christie was back there rebuilding the camp and getting ready to reopen it.
Right. Again, she starts at the lake watching them.
That's
and then
true.
She gets in her Jeep, kills the hitchhiker, and then drives
Maybe she had
back
errands
to the lake.
run.
Maybe, but it seems like what happened was she killed that girl and was like, fuck it, I'm going to go
She had to drive up to T-Mobile and pay her bill.
Right. Something. But she clearly gets bloodlust after killing that first girl. I mean, she killed 2 people back in the 60s, but...
Right, but it's been 20-odd years.
And she's like, you know what? I am going to go kill them. Like, maybe she was thinking about it, and then she killed the hitchhiker and was like, you know what? Because the next time we see her, she goes into that cabin, and Ned notices her just hanging out in that cabin.
Yeah.
And so she kills Ned off camera.
I want to talk about that.
Okay.
So, do you... Like, Ned spots her standing on the porch after he's been leering at Kevin Bacon make out with Marcy, and he's like, I wish I could have sex with her.
Right.
So he skips over to this cabin and notices Mrs. Voorhees and follows her inside the cabin. Do you think she just ambushed him, or do you think maybe they had a conversation first?
I mean, yeah, he could be looking for sex, and he's just like, hey there. That's a good question. I think so. She seems to ambush most people. Like that's her whole deal, which makes the ending even weirder.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing she ambushed him. But it would be neat if they talked to.
I would think like they had a conversation.
Right.
Like she slowly drew him into her trap. Or rather, it was just like the same conversation she has with Alice at the end of the film, where she can only maintain for like a minute or two, and then just goes full blown crazy.
Right? Yeah, probably. She starts doing her Jason voice.
Yeah, kill him, mommy, kill him. I hate the Dolphins. He's wearing a Dolphins jersey.
Here's the thing: if she killed him in the moment, that means she had to lift him up and put him in that. And I want to talk about that because Kevin Bacon and this woman go into this. Room to have sex, this cabin. They don't notice Ned, who's dead on the top bunk, which, if you've ever seen a bunk bed, it's not that high. So they're not noticing anything.
They're so overcome with fuck blindness.
Right, but it also means that, did Pamela clean up? Because they don't notice blood or anything?
Well, it starts to drip down on Kevin Bacon's face through the mattress, and then he immediately gets stabbed through the neck. So, here's what I'm proposing. I feel like that offers even more evidence to the fact that she didn't kill him immediately. She lured him into the top bunk of the bunk bed, probably promising a little bit of milk,
and then
some Gmail faction, and then slit his throat.
Yeah, because you're right. But they don't notice. And also, the Kevin Bacon is going to get stabbed under the bed, which means that after she killed Ned, she saw them coming and hid under the bed.
Yep.
And she's been under the bed for 45 minutes.
Yeah,
an hour.
Because
they fuck. They completely fuck.
Yeah,
and then
she listens to them she experiences them have sex because she's right underneath their mattress.
She's right underneath.
Yeah.
And then
she felt each thrust.
Yep. And then she waits even longer because Kevin Bacon gets high and hangs out for a little bit. So what is she waiting for? I have one theory, which is she fell asleep.
Probably.
She might have fallen asleep.
She might have.
Because then she's also holding an arrow, apparently. So she grabbed an arrow and hid under the bed and was like, oh, I got a good idea. And she stabs that arrow through Kevin Bacon.
She sure does, Dave.
I also think she might have gotten arrow lust here because arrows start slowly creeping into her killing from here on. And it advances as she goes. Then I think she has to pee, right? Because the next kill is in the bathroom. So she leaves this cabin and goes to the bathroom to, I guess, also wait. Because I'm sure I
think she's following Marcy because Marcy said I have to go to the bathroom.
Well, so she follows one of the girls from the bathroom. Okay, I see what you mean. Mm-hmm. Where she because the thing is, Marcy goes to the bathroom and then she hears a noise in the shower and goes to investigate.
Right, because Pamela's hiding in the shower when that happens.
Right, and so Pamela, and I think this later is going to happen too, because it's horror rules. It means the killer has to make noises and hope that the person will come to check it out. Later, she does the same thing in the bathroom, and the girl just leaves, so she has to follow her some more.
Yeah.
In this case, this girl investigates and gets an axe right in the face.
Yeah, directly into the face.
Later, they find that axe in a cabin on a pillow, which means
tucked into bed. Tucked into bed.
Right. So that means that because she never kills anybody else with that axe, right?
No.
So she has to bring that to that cabin.
Yep.
And she either does it now or later because
she does it later. She does it later because it's the cabin of
the girl who she kills.
I forget her name, but yeah, she lures her out of the cabin by using the Jason voice to say, "Help me!" So she falls.
Oh yeah.
She walks out and gets winds up stumbling into the archery range, and then it cuts. She dies off screen. But she goes into her cabin and puts the axe in her bed and tucks it in.
So after the archery.
After the archery, yeah.
All right. So she waits in the bathroom, and that girl goes in and doesn't fall for the bait. So she follows her, like you said, and then she's like, this girl isn't like she's not biting, so she has to literally just make little boy help noises.
Not taking the bait. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then she goes on the archery range, and this is what I mean, where she's like, "Ooh, more arrows." She dies off camera, but I assume Pamela like shoots at her, right?
She must. That's the implication.
So I think the idea is she had the axe. She was like, I like this idea that she did stab arrow, and then she was like, "Ooh, axe," and then the axe was like pretty good, but then she was like, "Ooh, bow and arrow," and she's like, "Don't need this axe anymore." So she went back to the girl's cabin and put the axe in her bed.
Yes.
Okay. Jesus Christ. And so now she's like arrow happy, right?
She just has a quiver with her now, presumably.
Right. You're
so
right.
She only used a few, probably one on the...
She's going to use a lot more later.
Yeah, so she uses the rest of them on Bill.
Yeah. But then Steve shows up, and I'm very confused about Steve because he shows up just at the camp sign, and someone shines a flashlight and kills him. So that means Pamela went back to the sign.
So she was leaving camp.
Yeah, she was leaving. She must have been, right? She was like,
maybe she went to get something to eat.
Yeah, but then she ran into Steve
and kills him.
Like, she keeps almost leaving and then killing someone and being like, "Yeah, you're right. I am going to keep killing."
So she goes and runs whatever errand she's going to run. Then she drives back, puts Steve in a tree so that he can swing down and startle Alice later.
Right.
Then also wraps the other girl, the one she killed in the archery range, whose name I forgot, wraps her up in rope and hoists her up over a tree branch so that she can then swing her through a window to scare Alice later. But that could happen after she kills Bill. Because that's right, because the first thing she does is she runs her errand, she comes back to the camp, and then she turns off the power. She turns off the generator.
Right. Because she realizes, like, okay, I got to keep baiting them. And again, she's like a 60-year-old lady, so like...
Right. She's aging as this night progresses, so she's like, man, I've got to really set some traps because...
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm old.
But she's also carrying a lot of bodies. Like,
She's got one body just sitting in the passenger seat of her car so she can drive in the HOV lane, but...
Yep. That's
really
nice.
rolling them dice.
Right. So I guess... So I'm not sure exactly why she went to the sign, but she turned around and was like, okay, I'm, and she has a flashlight, which I don't know. There's something about her having a flashlight that's funny. She shuts off the main power, which I understand. And then Bill comes and somehow, so all we know is that Bill is found with like 6 arrows in him against the door.
They do the same sort of playing with the tropes trick that they later do with Alice in the kitchen. They do with Bill when he goes out to the shed to restart the generator. The camera's like following him back and forth as he's doing things throughout the shack and waiting for the jump to happen, and it never does.
But he presumably leaves the shack. It's weird because he's pinned to like the back of the door.
Yes.
And the door is open, right? And then it closes and that reveals him?
Yes.
So my question is, he's pinned by the arrows. Did the first arrow kill him? Because if
his throat is also slashed. They do a close-up of his body.
Okay, well that
his
raises
throat
more
is
questions.
slashed, and he has like 3 arrows. One stuck in his head, one stuck in his neck, and I think another is stuck in his collarbone. Maybe it's only 2, but I feel like it's 3 arrows that are stapling him.
I thought it was a bunch. Yeah, so I assume Pamela was waiting in the woods and just like got that shot off, that lucky shot, right? and probably got him
Maybe?
in like the neck because she shoots him several times. And honestly,
Or
that
she
must
just
have taken a
stabs,
while.
or she just stakes him to the door.
Oh, that's true.
And she's just really powerful.
Okay, so she's holding 3 arrows.
Everything we've seen so far, like her carrying Steve's body into a, well, not so far, but like throughout the movie, carrying Steve's body into a tree, hoisting Annie back into her Jeep and just leaving her in the passenger seat, lifting up the other girl with a rope to swing her through the window. Like she's got some strength.
Yeah, I guess so.
She's got some power.
Yeah,
she's got some power beneath that crocheted sweater.
Okay, so you're saying she stabbed him with each arrow.
I think she cut his throat and then staked him to the door.
Okay, and then closed the door. That makes the most sense. Yeah.
Okay. I think she's just really
I was thinking
strong.
maybe she tried to practice some archery on him.
Nah.
But yeah, I guess not. She's just really into arrows.
Well, she had a bunch of them. She had the quiver. She picked up a quiver and a bow to shoot arrows at the one girl, and then I guess just got her with the first shot. She was like, "Well, fuck, I've got a bunch of other arrows. Might as well burn these suckers."
Right, and so then the girl finds the body, runs into the cabin, and this is when the body swings through.
Yes,
and so this is the part that I'm not clear on. The body swings through, she screams, and then a car shows up, and it's Pamela. So does that mean that Pamela brought her Jeep and like drove it just a little bit away?
Parked it a couple of yards back, maybe 100 yards back.
Yep, and then ran up to the cabin, released that body so that it swung, and then ran back to the Jeep, giggling, I assume, and drove up and pretended... Okay, that's weird.
Well, no, she does it to get Alice to unbarricade and unlock the door.
Right, but she doesn't need to swing the fucking body through. Like she does that just.
She could
for
just
fun.
come driving up in the Jeep. That's true.
Yeah, but instead she swings the body through, runs. Like this timing, she's really fast.
She's sprinting.
Yep, and then once that happens. I'm also not sure what's going on in her head, and I know she's a bit out of it.
She's crazy. Yeah.
But she, you'd think she'd just kill her like she killed everybody else, but no, she does. She pretends to be concerned about the body she just threw. She reacts to the body.
She plays a game with her for a little bit.
Right, and then she can't keep it together and just attacks her and starts slapping the shit out of her.
She slaps
and wrestling
the bejesus out of her. It's great.
Yeah, but it is like she was doing great, and it really falls apart for her at the end. Yeah. Like she could have just killed this girl. She could have just stabbed her like she stabbed everybody else.
Maybe she has moments like this scene seems to suggest that maybe because she walks in to help Alice and she looks at the bodies and she gets overwhelmed. Like maybe she blacks out or disassociates. Like because she's like. Yeah. She goes from that to telling Alice about the story of Jason drowning, and then her anger rises, and then she gets to the point where she's speaking as Jason and saying, "Kill her, mommy." So maybe she dissociates. I don't know.
For sure. I mean, there's we don't have to. We don't
need to try to fucking diagnose Pamela.
Oh yeah, but also it's also very clear. Like, she's acting erratically.
Yeah, she's
but it is still very funny.
She's not behaving in a logical manner, but it is extremely
she's on a weird
funny
rampage. Yeah,
that her rampage is so specifically weird, and for the benefit of an audience.
Going back and forth to her Jeep, and it seems like she keeps not deciding what to do, and like again, swinging the body through is very strange, because like you said, she set that up in advance, or she did it right after she ran to the cabin. I don't know which one's weirder because she was just like home aloneing it.
Yeah.
At that point.
Maybe she had all the bodies in the Jeep and just deployed them as necessary.
Maybe,
when she followed Alice to the cabin and Alice barricaded herself in, she was like, well, I got to get this body out. So she just dragged the body out of the Jeep and hoisted it up with a rope and threw it through the window.
It's a big Jason thing in the future movies too, is setting up body finds. Michael Myers does it too.
Yeah.
And I wish they had figured that out in the game where you could like take the bodies.
We could stage the bodies. Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been great. But so she does that. And then, it just all falls apart. She just slaps the shit out of this girl and fucking gets decapitated. So that's her journey.
Yep.
Should we want to move on? Do you have any
so.
other? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to keep writing a play-by-play if possible of just like what are the steps to what Jason does. And now we're on our next segment, our second to last segment. This is called Second Best Monsters. Who are the biggest ghouls who aren't the killer?
Who aren't, Jason normally, but in this movie, the biggest ghouls who are
Pamela. Which means that the second best monster is technically Jason. But obviously that's not what we're going for here. Because this movie, as we said, is a whodunit in a lot of ways. And by being a whodunit, they introduce a lot of weirdos. Ned, who pranks them, who does the drowning prank.
We're introduced to Ned hitting on Kevin Bacon's girlfriend as Kevin Bacon is making out with her.
Yeah. Is that he also fires an arrow right next to the girl?
The girl who is later killed on the archery range, yes.
Yeah. He fires, he's so confident in his archery skills that she's setting up a target and an arrow goes shoop into it. And then he immediately does a Humphrey Bogart impression. And it's like, this man is unhinged.
Right. He's wearing a racist Indian costume. Like he's wearing a feather in his head.
And then later he does that racist.
And he shoots at her. And then he suddenly becomes Humphrey Bogart. And then later he's progressed in his racist Indian outfit. He's gotten more feathers into his headdress. Yeah. And now he's shirtless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a real January 6th type.
Right, and then
he's
later on...
storming the Capitol.
And
then later he fakes his drowning, and elaborately so.
Yes.
Like he keeps it going for like 10 minutes. He pretends to drown. They all have to go out and they take a boat, a useless canoe, and they all dive in and they drag him out and he acts unconscious for like a minute and then starts laughing. And it's like, what the fuck, man?
Right,
like,
long enough to genuinely alarm his friends.
Yeah, he is just on a weird rampage.
Okay, go ahead.
No, it's just like he's just unhinged. It's so weird.
And then moments before his death, Kevin Bacon and Marcy are having an intimate moment. They're like they're making out. They're also walking along the edge of the lake, and they're having this conversation. She's telling him about dreams they've had. They're having a very private couples moment, you know,
right?
Like a sweet, enriching moment between these two characters where they're learning more about each other and they're having a conversation.
That's when
and then it pans over to Ned, who is just leering at them from the other side of the lake and being like, I wish she was my girlfriend.
They really want us to think Ned is like he's so loud as an unhinged person, so they kill him off pretty quickly because it's like, no, it's not Ned.
Right.
But that girl is also talking about her thunderstorm blood dream.
Yeah.
That she's had 5 or 6 times. So I was like, oh, she's also a weird monster.
Right. She has a recurring dream where it rains blood.
She's like, hey Kev, I got a real red flag for you.
Like, which means she's awesome.
Yeah. So like, I think they're kind of pointing at him or her. The cop who shows up is kind of a fucking weirdo. But of course, I think we have the same winner here, right?
Oh yeah.
It's Crazy Ralph.
It's Crazy Ralph.
He's credited on IMDb as Crazy
Ralph. They call him Crazy Ralph.
Yeah.
His introduction is the initial girl that we meet, Annie, is walking through the town, goes into the diner to ask for a ride. This tow truck driver, who is a little bit of a monster, he could be technically added to this list. Yeah. Because he offers to give her a ride as far as like maybe a mile away from Camp Crystal Lake. Walks her out to, and as he's walking her out to his pickup truck is when Ralph makes his appearance. But I want to finish my thought about this tow truck driver.
Yeah.
Has offered her a ride. Is opens up the door to his tow. Actually, it's not a tow truck; it's a gas truck. Anyway, opens up the door to his truck. Immediately puts both hands on her ass to hoist her up into the truck.
Right.
And then as they're driving to where he's going to drop her off, he keeps leering at her.
Yeah.
Like making really strange expressions. And then, of course, he goes into this monologue like where we learn he's really concerned because he's like, look, Camp Crystal Lake is cursed. You and your friends are probably in danger. You shouldn't go there. But then he just lets her off with like a smile. It's like, oh, okay, well, enjoy your summer working at Crystal Lake, and then drives off.
Right.
After delivering these dire warnings. So I feel like he's a ghoul that belongs on this list, but
yeah, I would say
Ralph.
he's like your standard ghoul that most young women experience throughout their day.
He's a standard ghoul, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, like I think a woman meets like one of these a week.
It's that is so accurate that like watching this scene where he's helping her up into his tow truck and immediately both of his hands go for her ass. Genuinely didn't know whether that was written or whether the actor playing the truck driver was just putting his hands on this actress's ass so he could hoist her up into the truck.
Yeah,
legitimately didn't know.
No, watching every woman actress in all of these movies is like watching a horse in a Lord of the Rings show or movie where you're like, I'm scared for you. Generally speaking,
it's a real white knuckle experience.
Anyway. I hope you got through this okay, young woman.
We'll talk about it in part 2, but there's a real significant problem with that in part 2.
Oh, I know, yeah.
I know you know, yeah. Anyway, so Ralph's introduction is in this scene where this truck driver is walking Annie to his truck. They're walking past this like courthouse building that has like steps up into like a porch, and Ralph just springs off of the porch in front of them to say, "You're doomed. You're all doomed." Which
means
to
Camp Blood, ain't you?
He was lurking on that porch, just watching them come around the corner and waiting until they were right in front of them to jump out in front of them and deliver his prophecy.
And then he gets on his little rusty blue bike and
and then he gets on his his fucking 80-year-old bicycle.
It's something very funny about someone trying to be creepy and then getting on a bike. Yeah. He just awkwardly gets on a bike and they just watch him drive away. He survives, doesn't he, Crazy Ralph?
Not for long, but he lives through this movie.
Okay, he lives through this movie.
Yeah.
Then I got to talk about his second appearance, right?
Yes. This is what puts him over the top.
Yes, he rides that bike, and it's like, where's Crazy Ralph going? Well, we know. He's riding to the camp so he can get in their pantry and stand there.
Dave? So what happens is, I think Alice is puttering around the kitchen, opens the pantry, and just sees Crazy Ralph standing there in the center of the room.
He's just in the pantry.
But did you notice that the cop that comes to the camp, he gives somebody a ride, right? I forget who he gives a ride to.
Right.
But the cop comes to the camp and then gets called away for some car accident. But he comes to the... Oh, no, wait. I'm sorry. It's after she discovers Ralph in the pantry, it cuts to a deputy being there and talking to the kids. And the deputy tells them that Ralph is a missing person. Like, he's been looking for Ralph all day. This means that Ralph has been standing in that pantry long enough to be declared a missing person.
So what we're hearing, I think the answer is Ralph got trapped in the pantry.
Right, he got locked in.
Yeah, it's like a raccoon that found its way into the pantry and got locked in.
Yeah.
And then once you open it, they're like, and run out. Like he's just standing in that pantry, I assume eating like cereal or whatever.
Eating like crackers and Oreos and shit.
Just hanging out in there.
And then somebody opens the door and he's like, "You're doomed!" And then he scuttles out to his bike and rides away.
It's incredible. It's funny as hell. Like, they must have known how funny that fucking is. Because it's not like he's in the woods. Like, it's like something where it's like, oh, he could have been off fishing or like taking a dump. No. He wandered on to this fucking camp and I presumably got in the cabin, walked into the pantry, and just
stood there, just hung out,
shut the door
for hours.
Yep. Silent, just in silence, like he's the Terminator.
Long enough for the cops to be called.
Yep.
Because people close to Ralph are wondering where he is.
Where's Crazy Ralph? Yeah. He was supposed to be here in my pantry.
Yeah, he was supposed to be hiding under my bed hours ago.
Yeah. It is.
I'm concerned for him.
It is the biggest plot hole is that Ralph isn't the murderer. Because I don't see how he couldn't be.
Honestly,
like he is definitely our second best monster.
Yeah, hands down.
Winner. The prize goes to Ralph.
Crazy Ralph.
Oh my God.
Shall we move on to our final section, Dave?
Yeah. Obviously, it's time to rank the murders. Death rank.
Obviously.
By my count, not counting a snake, there are 10 deaths in this.
I think that's correct.
We can go through each one. The first 2 are just like that guy stabbed in the tum-tum, and then the POV.
Yep, zooming in on her. Yeah, freeze frame, zooming in on her face.
Yeah, first murder of the whole series, so there's that. The next, and we can just go through them and then figure out.
Yeah.
Hitchhiker, she gets her throat slit.
Annie gets her throat slashed. It's a pretty good effect, actually. It's a good gig.
Yeah, and it's a good narrative effect, too.
Yeah.
Ned found off-screen in the bunk bed.
It's a shocking moment. It's a surprising moment.
The end of Bacon, which is only shocking if you watch this later on and you're like, oh, it's Kevin Bacon. Surely he'll survive.
Well, it's also surprising in terms of where the murder comes from because she stabs up through the bed, so it's not where you would expect.
This is the murder that makes you realize murders can happen at any time because you just don't see a murder in this moment, especially that one. Axe in the face in the bathroom.
Yeah, that's Marcy. That's a pretty good one.
Yep. Archery kill. Off camera, you just hear screaming. The death of Steve. Flashlight in the face. He sort of flinches.
He gets a little tummy stab. He gets tummy stabbed.
Yep. Bill with the arrows. You don't see it happen, but it's a hell of a find.
Yeah. It's a hell of a reveal.
And finally, the death of Pamela Voorhees. Head chopped clean off.
So iconic that it's its own Jason kill in the video game.
That's true.
You can unlock this specific kill.
So I'm kind of torn. I'm going to say the off-camera ones, I kind of automatically am like, nah.
Yeah. Although the Bill reveal is pretty great. I would put that at the top of the list of the off-camera deaths.
For sure. That's the best off-camera death.
Yeah. I mean...
Axe in the face is very gnarly.
Axe in the face is gnarly.
Show it.
They sort of show it. They show the axe raise. It cuts to a very funny reaction shot of the actress playing Marcy, who like shuts her eyes and raises her hand, but she's like flinching in a very like theatrical way, like it's like it's like a woman getting the vapors right as she's about to faint. Right,
and then the shot of the axe in her face,
and then it's a shot of an axe in her face. We don't need to go through and rank each one.
Do you know which one? Do you know which one?
I think I do, and it might be a real hot take.
All right, let's count of 3 and then we'll say it.
All right.
1, 2, 3. Kevin Bacon.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's Kevin Bacon. That's the best one.
Yeah, I don't think it's that hot of a take because the hitchhiker death was up there for me too because of what it meant thematically.
Just narratively, yeah, it's surprising.
Yeah. But Bacon's death sets the tone for the rest of the deaths, and it's also an arrow. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Why is that an arrow? It's also fucking gnarly as shit.
Yeah. It's the most surprising. It's gnarly. If you watch it later, of course, like you were saying, you have that additional level of, well, it's Kevin Bacon. He's the most famous person in this movie. Surely he won't die immediately. Yeah,
killing Kevin Bacon, that alone, that's a thing.
And it comes from a direction where you would just never expect it. Like up through the bed is not what you're thinking in that moment.
Right.
It's the most surprising, shocking, I guess I'll say scary for that reason, death in the film. And yeah, like you said, it sets the tone for anyone is going to die at any moment, and the murder can come from any direction.
Yeah. I'm writing it down because I think at the end of this series, we're going to have to rate them all, right? We're going to have to find the single best.
It's our solemn duty, yeah.
Yeah. But for this movie, I think it's unanimous. Kevin Bacon getting arrowed. 100%.
That Bacon boy.
I think it'll be harder in later episodes here. But for now, I'm glad we agree.
Yeah. We're in agreement, Dave.
Yeah, I think when we have a tie, we should just put them both. Because ultimately, this is about finding the number one. right?
Yes, I agree with that.
And so, like, it's
that.
okay to double up movies. We don't have to find a definitive one within each movie, unless we just happen to agree.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I think we did it, Dave. I think we did our contractual obligation.
I think so too, and it feels good. You know, it feels good to have done this. That means next film, Friday the 13th, Part 2. The first one that actually has Jason Voorhees.
Yep.
And boy, is he a doofus in that.
It has some of the greatest what's Jason up to moments.
Yeah, there's shots of him where he's like Bigfoot. I remember that, where it's like they see him running through the woods, and it's like he's just so funny.
Well, there's at one point it becomes clear that he must be riding a bicycle.
Right.
That's all I'll say.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. God damn. Okay. Fuck. So, thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Krishanovic, thank you for being a producer. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes.
I am excited.
Very excited for this series.
Because we are going to do 10 and maybe even... Is there Freddy versus Jason? I mean, I bet we can do that as well.
There's technically 12. Because there's Jason 1 through 10.
Right, and the remake.
And then there's Freddy versus Jason, and then there's the remake.
We can do 12. We can do 12.
Let's do 12. Let's do 12.
Fuck yes.
We're not going to not do all the Jasons.
No. Listen, folks, this was through our Patreon. And if you're interested, you can go to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed, GAMEFULLY, unemployed. For $5 a month, you get access to a bunch of exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder's Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys.
Yep.
For a little more, you can watch movies with us every Friday night. We have watched every single Friday the 13th movie more than once.
We have. At least once for all of them.
At least once for all of them. Yeah, I think maybe the remake we only watched once. I'm not sure.
Probably. I don't know.
Maybe this one we only watched once. Who knows?
I think part 5. Anyway.
Yeah, but you know, if you know us, you know what we're up to. You know our whole deal. We're also on Twitter at Gamefully Un. I think we have a Twitch, Gamefully Unemployed, which we occasionally go on. Sometimes we play Friday the 13th.
We do.
So check all that out.
Yeah. We also have a store. Head over to GamefullyUnemployed.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store where you can get all kinds of cool original artwork and designs on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things, including some Jason designs, I believe.
Absolutely.
So slap your little MASKHOLE peepers onto that.
Yes. Celebrate MASKHOLES. It's only just begun.
It has only just begun. There's a long road ahead of us, a long, storied, glorious, very fun road ahead of us. So excited to be doing a Friday the 13th show, finally, at long last.
Yes. The future is bright and bloody.
Indeed. All right.
A little awkward.
Mostly awkward.
Bye.
Bye.